So let's talk about Neverfulls, never-ending budgets, and the art of finesse. So you might have seen on places like TikTok over the last couple of weeks, couple of months that the Neverfull seems to be back, quote unquote. Now, I'm Nigerian and I feel like I'm surrounded by Neverfulls every day. Like they were never gone for me, but there has been an influencer campaign that's been rolled out where a bunch of influencers are kind of saying, oh my gosh, this is the Neverfull, it's so cool, and it's now reversible and all this stuff. But that is not the end of the story, because all the regular people felt like, I'm not quite convinced, right? Because every single creator that was telling them that the Neverfull was back and it was so exciting, they were a luxury creator who maybe had never even celebrated the bag before. They had maybe even said that it was kind of outdated, it was quote unquote chuggy. And there were some regular girls who were like, I've had my Neverfull since 2017, I've had my Neverfull since 2007. This is my life, and I would have loved to talk about the fact that there's a whole new collection and it's launching. I would have loved to do something with Louis Vuitton. And it really got me thinking about one of the aspirations or challenges that people who run businesses talk about all the time, which is this idea that well, if I had money to pay influencers, everything would be sorted. And I think from that example, right, in this Louis Vuitton example, they have, infinite amount to gift or pay influencers, and still people had questions. What does that tell us? That influencer marketing or having the budget is not the solution and is not the one-stop shop for building a business and creating the marketing effect that you want. You need the art of finesse, you need nuance, and maybe you need to think about some new fresh strategies. Like I said, I love the Neverfull and I love a lot of the monogram products. And one of the things that I would have considered is I would have actually really, really leaned into nostalgia, right? Because the Neverfull specifically and the Louis Vuitton monogram has gone through so many evolutions over the years that I would have lent on maybe, think about early 2000s, which are kind of having a resurgence, stars from the early 2000s like Pamela Anderson and Lindsay Lohan are kind of coming back into public discourse, right? I would have lent into that kind of early 2000s aesthetic and revived it, and maybe even started a new trend that people could hop onto. It's really interesting because when this influencer campaign started, or this influencer gifting campaign started, and I was gathering my notes, all the notes that I had about this for this episode, the announcement that the Takashi Murakami collection was being revived hadn't been made. So I didn't even know that. So when we think about this nostalgia thing that I had been saying before, the fact that the Murakami collection has basically been revived 20 years later kind of taps into that. So I feel like we're kind of on this telepathy wave in terms of some of the other creative ideas that are coming out of the brand. But that would have been a really interesting and I think potentially more compelling direction to go in when we thought about how to revive or bring back the Neverfull to general discourse. One of the other things that I would have considered is thinking about what is luxury and the many different ways that that manifests, right? Because I think a lot of the creators were kind of your more classic, the typical luxury creator that you would expect. But I also thought about how do you contextualize the actual Neverfull product in other luxury contexts that maybe people don't immediately think of, right? So one of those for me was this idea of the fact that the Neverfull is a bag that you can put so much stuff in, right? You can put your whole life in it. And I thought about mums, and I thought about how, people always say, a mum has everything that she needs in her bag. And for me, I would have loved to see, and I would love to continue to see some more collaborations with mums Diary of a New York City mum. She takes her young daughter around and does all these interesting things in New York City. She is living a great life. She is living definitely a high price point life, but it just is a different translation of what luxury looks like. And I think while it may sound okay, how are we going to intertwine mums and motherhood with this aspirational thing? Because I think, as we've said in other episodes, sometimes as a woman gets older, people kind of maybe forget about her in the conversation. But for me, when you think about crossing over things that on the surface don't look like they match, that is where you have innovation, that is where you cut through, that is where you have people saying, okay, I loved that, and actually I'm gonna buy into it. That's where you have people remembering what you did. And for me, that's one of the biggest things, right? We're surrounded by so much information day in, day out. if you can create something that people actually remember once they turn off their phones, once they put their phone down and they're sitting at the dinner table with their friends, then you've had success. One of the other pillars that I would have like really lent into is this idea of travel, right? Travel is naturally always associated with luxury, and I would have tapped creators like LA to luxury for my content. So these are creators that they take us through the whole airport experience. So again, you get to integrate the product into the fact that the Neverfull is the travel accessory. It is the travel product, and we've seen that in other brands, how they've like been able to connect and bolt on their product to a day-to-day experience that people have. So every time someone is thinking about listening to music, they're thinking about a certain product. Maybe every time someone is thinking about how they retain moisture in their skin when they're flying, they're thinking about a handful of products. That's really interesting to me. And that would have been something to explore in a way that maybe felt a bit more unexpected, but also maybe more authentic than, you know, the general, like just gifting straight out to all the typical influencers that you would expect. So those are some of my thoughts. But I hope this kind of gets you thinking about A, how you can integrate unexpected things into what you're working on at the moment. And B, it also opens your mind to know that having all the budget to gift or to pay influencers is helpful, really helpful actually. But it's definitely not the beginning and the end of the story.